Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Thursday, May 27th, 2021. I'm David Menzies, and as always on Tuesday and Thursday, I am joined by, well, what a lovely co-host. More than anyone could ever ask for. She is the she-devil with a sword, the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta, Sheila Gunn Reid. How are you doing, my friend?
David, I'm great. Still dealing with technical difficulties for those following along at home. I think I finally have my camera set up. I've sorted out my audio problems, but I thought I had my lighting right. I went outside, got a little sun, put on some makeup, came back, put on a yellow shirt. Everything's all wrong. So I remain struggling here on my own, sorting out my technical issues. Speaking of technical issues, Justin, I can't see anything in the Skype feed, which is fine, but I do like looking at David's beautiful face when we're talking. So if that's something that you can fix, please, great. Thank you.
We must be having technical difficulties if what you're seeing above my shoulders is a beautiful face, Sheila. But I got to tell you, I love that shirt. Yellow has to be your color, Sheila, and it's kind of like a tartan. I don't know what clan would be wearing yellow in their tartan, but it looks great on you. Is that part of your new spring ensemble?
Flannel is always in vogue around here. Thank you. David, you gave me a compliment one time when we were in Israel. I was wearing a bright yellow shirt, and you said, boy, that sure looks good on you. And I never ever considered what colors actually look good on me. And since then, since that compliment, yellow's making its way into my wardrobe a little bit more. So what you said really stuck with me. So I appreciate that.
I don't remember that conversation. Although I got to tell you, folks, it was that Israel trip where Sheila and I truly bonded, and it came down to two words: Subaru Brat. Sheila actually owned a Subaru Brat, the truck of my dreams, and it was an incredible. We were going back to the late 70s, early 80s for this truck. What I loved about the Subaru Brat is they bolted two rear-facing seats into the bed of the truck, and it was an ingenious way of Subaru getting around truck import tariffs, which were far, far higher for Japanese imports than car tariffs. So evidently, by bolting those two seats into the bed, it qualified as a car. So you gotta love that kind of ingenuity. And Sheila, it broke my heart on the same day when you told me you no longer had it, you sold it. I would have bought that from you.
Here's the thing, though, David. I got it at an auction sale, and then brought it home, posted a couple of pictures of it to my Facebook. And then nearly instantly, I got a message for somebody wanting to buy it. And it needed a lot of work. So out you go. I flipped it, really. I didn't have it very long.
But Sheila, of course you got a lot of information, a lot of feedback for that truck because it's collectible, or at least quasi-collectible.
Yep.
Even in rough shape, even if you had to do an all-out restoration of it. When was the last time you saw a Subaru Brat on the road?
Yeah, never.
Exactly.
And it ran just fine. But yeah, it did have two plastic seats just bolted backwards facing in the truck box, if you can even call that little thing a truck box. And there weren't seat belts or anything. Just get in there and sit down, I guess.
And then they kind of tried it again without the seats with the Subaru Baja, which, depending on the color configuration, can be one of the most ugly vehicles ever conceived. But you don't even see those on the road anymore. And I think the last one they made was like 2007, 2008. So those are rarities, but enough about cars. We actually have a mission to complete here. So Sheila, why don't you tell the folks our ostensible policy reason for taking up an hour of bandwidth?
Yes. So this is the Rebel Daily News live stream. It just used to be just on Friday, just hosted by Ezra Levant. Then the pandemic hit. All of us were sort of grounded from traveling. And we felt like there was more news than ever. And one of the best ways to talk about the news as it's changing, because it's changing so rapidly, even now, day by day, is live, in David and I's case, with each other, because I think we like each other, and it's good for me out here to be able to interact with people in the office, at least, live on air twice a week. Dave and I host Tuesdays and Thursdays. And before YouTube went full evil and the mask slipped off YouTube's face, it used to be a great way for us to make a little money through something called a super chat, which gave our viewers the opportunity to support the work that we do, but also interact with each other, because you could give us some money and we would read the question, query, comment attached to it live on air. We can't do that anymore, but you can still donate to us. If you just go to rebelnews.com, there's a little donations page there. You can just go completely around the censorship of YouTube by going there. But it also made us realize that our time is very limited on YouTube, especially since they are changing their terms of service on June 1st once again. And again, things are pretty unclear about what they plan to do in the future. But what we can put our money on is that it's going to result in increased censorship for conservatives. So we have come up with plan B and plan C through to plan, I guess, Z, really. Right now, we're currently streaming on Rumble, which is a good free speechy platform. And they've recently introduced a live chat function over on Rumble. So those things that I like about YouTube, minus their politics, where you can see people interacting with each other and commenting on what you're saying, you can do that over on Rumble. So if you're watching us on the censorship platform of YouTube, why don't you take an off-ramp? Go on over to Rumble or one of these other platforms like...
It looks like Sheila has frozen. That's the situation, folks, when it comes to live broadcasting, and it, especially when it might be Sheila's lovely daughter going on the internet again, and all that mysterious bandwidth stuff happens. So, and yes, and to finish Sheila's thoughts, you can also watch the show on Odyssey and Super U, and both have live chats as well. So Odyssey, Super U, Rumble, there are your alternatives. There are the off-ramps, as Sheila likes to say, from the YouTube censorious universe, which is only going to get worse on June the 1st, which I think is a Tuesday. And Sheila, I think you're back with us. You're amongst...
Am I?
I think so.
Am I?
I was just saying to the folks while you were frozen that Odyssey and Super U also have live chats as well as Rumble. Yep. And I'm just thinking June 1st, my goodness gracious, that's Tuesday of next week, isn't it? If I'm doing the calculations right. So that might be our last stand. So who knows what's going to happen? And I would argue, Sheila, the tech giants are so censorious right now against those on the right side of the political spectrum. They don't even have to change their terms of service. I don't know why they bother. I mean, there was no valid reason to demonetize us. We know that. They know that. Everybody knows that. They just decide, and they never give you a valid answer. So I don't even know why they're going through the motions of pretending to have new terms of service, which we are, of course, immediately going to violate for some crazy reason on June the 1st, or maybe they'll let it go a few days before they put the noose around our necks. But wow. I just think back to 10, 12 years ago when these were just startups, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and how they were reaching out to everybody, including those on the right. Oh, please come give us your content for free, of course, didn't pay for it. And this is the new realm of free speech, and welcome to the First Amendment online. And then they achieve a critical mass, and suddenly you, and you out. There's the exit. This was the swindle of the century when it comes to free speech, I think, Sheila.
For sure it was. And, we see this all the time where these social media companies, they censor you and then down the road, they're like, well, maybe you were right. But what good does that do? You're not going to go back and uncensor us. Like, they're just now, after censoring everybody who talked about just the theory that maybe the coronavirus came from a Wuhan Virology Institute facility, they censored anybody who even remotely posed it as a question, put it up there as a thought bubble. They censored people, killed their social media accounts. And now they're saying, well, maybe there's some validity to that. You're allowed to talk about it now. But what about all the people that you just othered right from the world because you didn't like their ideas before and time has proven them right?
Yeah,
it's really easy because they don't have any consequences and you can't unring the bell.
But not according to our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. That's racist to bring up anything to do with Chinese virologists and the coronavirus. And he won't stand for racism, I'll tell you, Premier Justin Trudeau.
Well, yeah, of course he's got to shut down anybody asking questions about these things because he gave them $900,000.
Yes.
So you can't bring that up because then you're posing questions of why are you funding the place that potentially unleashed a virus on the world that shut down economies and caused civil liberties to be stripped from people, innocent people all across the world, forced innocent people into house arrest. You can't talk about, the Virology Institute because then that poses the natural question, why did you give these inept, possibly corrupt people a bunch of money? Canadian money.
And Sheila, for him to have the audacity to play the racism card, he doesn't even know how many times he's worn blackface and brownface. As well, our ire with China is not with the Chinese people. Of course not. It's with the regime in China. And yet, here's a fellow who 6 years ago said he has a great admiration for the basic dictatorship in China. Those are his words. This is insane for a leader of any Western democracy to say that. And if we criticize the Chinese Communist Party, if we criticize the regime in Beijing, we're racist against Chinese people. Give me a break. It's the Chinese people in that country, many of them, who are the biggest victims of that regime. That was disgraceful how our Prime Minister handled those questions put to him by Candice Bergen yesterday. Absolutely disgraceful.
I have no idea what just happened with my lighting. I just turned into some sort of blue robot. Wait, now I'm coming back. I don't know what's going on with my camera. It's funny that you can't question anything the communists do without suddenly becoming racist.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's the same people who will say that Taiwan isn't really a country. And, Taiwan is ethnically Chinese. And they get to determine their own way in the world. And it's the liberal left who are saying, oh, well, Taiwan's not really a country. They're actually part of China, and we can acknowledge them as part of an independent country. But if you're critical of China, you're suddenly a racist, and they just can't pick a lane.
It is astonishing. And I fear for the future of Taiwan, Sheila. We've seen what's happened in Hong Kong. China is increasingly becoming belligerent. It wants to be the straw that stirs the drink, so to speak. And with a weakling in the White House, which is what we have right now, I wouldn't be surprised in the months and years ahead to see this nation flex its muscles. And when you see someone like, I don't know if you saw this, John Cena doing a groveling apology because he referred to Taiwan as a nation. John Cena? Are you kidding me? Another one off my list, Sheila. That's all I got to say.
Do you know, some people are just so money motivated.
Oh, jeez.
That's exactly why he did it. I even bet that in his heart of hearts, naturally, he thinks Taiwan's an independent country. Of course it is. It operates as an independent country. It's got its own government. It's got an independent economic system from mainland China. It's been independent for decades. Why would anybody even consider Taiwan part of China unless you are a Chinese imperialist? And frankly, I don't think John Cena is, but I think he's greedy. That's what I think. And I think he doesn't want to piss off the single largest consumer market of entertainment outside of the Anglosphere. And that's what it's about.
And you know what? It might have been pressure from the studio that got to John Cena as opposed to anything China did. It's like, Mr. Cena, do you have any idea what the box office receipts are from the Chinese movie-going market right now versus the Taiwan movie-going market? So whoever applied the pressure, but to see him fold, well, to use his catchphrase in wrestling, you can't see me. That's right. I won't be seeing you anymore, I better watch what I'm going to say, but think of somebody that just does certain services for money. That's John Cena.
Well, I mean, he works in an industry that's based on free speech.
What's that?
Right? Like he works in an industry that's based on free speech. Without free speech, the movie industry just does not exist. It's not a thing. And so you're kowtowing to the forced speech of the Chinese. It's really quite shocking, and I really don't care who's responsible for the struggle session we saw with John Cena the other day. I don't care if it's this China putting pressure on the studio and the studio putting pressure on John Cena. John Cena's the guy who decided, yup, I better renounce the free people of Taiwan. And then pat himself on the back because, look, I'm an anti-Chinese racist, while stripping the ethnic Chinese people of Taiwan of their own self-determination.
And I would argue, Sheila, that a considerable chunk of his base, his fans, have now tuned out because, people aren't stupid. They can smell, a rat. Wow, Cena was king rat on the day he issued that groveling apology. And by the way, good segue, I think, when it comes to freedom of speech and freedom of expression and freedom of assembly. We have an Arthur Pawlowski update. This is perhaps, when it comes to freedoms and charter rights, this is perhaps the most important story in Canada, maybe even the world, in terms of when it comes to freedom of religion, freedom to worship. And Sheila, we have a update. And so why don't we run that video and see what the latest is when it comes to Pastor Arthur.
Okay, we're doing absolutely nothing to compromise that position. Do you understand? There's a March for Jesus going on in Edmonton. Whoever wants to go, fully support you guys going. That's fantastic, okay? Art's not going because the court date is the most important thing that he can do at this time. We finally got our day in court to challenge all of these ridiculous laws. It doesn't make sense to compromise it with something else.
Adam Sos here for Rebel News, and I'm outside the church of Pastor Arthur Pawlowski. Now, Arthur Pawlowski is not here today. Pastor Peter has taken the lead once again. And this is because Pastor Arthur Pawlowski's court date has been moved. It's now going to be taking place this upcoming Wednesday. So until he has his day in court, he's being very cautious to not incur any further wrath from the government of Alberta or Alberta Health Services. So we've seen no police presence here today. So far, no police helicopter flyovers. There's a crowd beginning to gather as worship is about to proceed outside today. We're going to hang around all day and make sure to keep you posted should any developments arise.
So their court date is Wednesday, and you'll notice they're not here, okay? We're doing absolutely nothing to compromise that position. Do you understand? There's a March for Jesus going on in Edmonton. Whoever wants to go, fully support you guys going. That's fantastic, okay? Art's not going because the court date is the most important thing that he can do at this time. We finally got our day in court to challenge all of these ridiculous laws. It doesn't make sense to compromise it with something else.
So we're holding church service here. The gates of hell shall not prevail against the Church of God. So we thank God for His grace and mercy upon us. We're holding church outside because of all the restrictions and everything like that. And we're looking forward to bringing a barbecue next week. Actually, we're going to do some fellowship outside with the barbecue. And today we're doing Holy Communion and preaching the Word. and just trying to help people, reach out to people in these troubling times, bring them peace, bring them hope. That's what the church is called to do. Church was never called to sit in a basement on a Zoom meeting and not reach out to the communities and the people that are out there that have needs. So we thank God for this opportunity. We thank God for Rebel Media, Fight the Fines, and God bless you all.
Father God, we thank you for this day. You have done it again for us. There's no one like you. And we just come together to thank you in the name of Jesus. Amen. And all my church.
You know, Sheila, before you weigh in with your thoughts, I just can't get that image out of my head of Pastor Arthur on a highway in Calgary with live traffic whizzing by, on his knees, being, you know, I would say roughly arrested, when the Calgary Police Service, which is currently rising up the charts, folks, as one of the worst police services in this Dominion. And given that we have such police services as, the Montreal Police and the Aylmer Police, that's speaking volumes, but they never had to do that. They know where he lived, they know where he goes, and it was just shameful. But it's just something that really bugs me. And I think if the Calgary Police were trying to send a message, I think it backfired in terms of most people, Sheila.
Art Pawlowski and his brother and those around him at this point are up against the full force of the Alberta government, as well as the full force of the city of Calgary and the CPS. And so that's why I'm very glad that we are helping them cover all their legal costs at no cost to them through savearthur.com. And let me just stop and thank everybody who has donated and who continues to donate there to support Arthur in this fight for not just religious liberty, but freedom of assembly, free speech, and to preserve a little bit of that separation of church and state that, you hear from the left all the time, separation of church and state, separation of church and state. I actually believe that too, because I want the state out of our churches. And Pastor Art has resisted the state, the province, telling him what classifies as acceptable worship in his church. And yesterday, for the whole day, and I got to tell you, and I don't like to complain about work, but it is the most stressful thing that I do here at Rebel News. I'll wade into a crowd of Antifa before I tackle live tweeting a court case, because it's so stressful, because your brain is operating like way up here all day, because you're listening. You're trying to translate the legalese. You're trying to get it as accurate as possible. So you're listening, you're typing, you're trying to avoid typos, but they've already moved on to something else. So you're trying to remember what they're saying so that you can translate it and type and tweet it. And it's so much. Yeah. Like when they break for 10 minutes, you put your head on the desk. It's just so much. But yesterday I was covering the 2 contempt hearings for Pastor Art and his brother. And the first contempt hearing stemmed from the very first video, or I guess it would be the second video, when Alberta Health Services came back with a warrant and said, we want to enter your church. And Art cast them out. He said, get out. I want to talk to my lawyer. And they said that constituted service of the order. That moment in time, you've seen the entire exchange. That moment in time when they come back with an order that says, a judge has signed off on the fact that we don't have to abide by Section 176 of the Canadian Criminal Code, and we get to enter your church at any time. They came back at 8:50 in the morning, and they served him with that order and said, here you go, we're headed in. And they said that counts as service. Service has to be more than just, here's an order, we're headed in. They have to serve you. They have to allow you to read it and understand it, and then give you the opportunity to comply with the order before you're found in contempt of the order. The whole exchange with Pastor Art there was 2.5 minutes. There's no way that he could understand it and comply with it in 2.5 minutes. But they have him on a contempt charge right now and yesterday was the hearing all morning. Oh my goodness. Sarah Miller, Pastor Art's lawyer from JSS Barristers, is so great at laying down that timeline of how can you expect anyone to comply with this. And secondarily, the Alberta Health Services first argue, well, we didn't want to go in during church services, so don't think we're the bad guy because we are going in during church services. But then they go and get a court order that says we can go in anytime between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Well, guess what time that is? Church is happening during those times. And then they said, but it's also necessary for us to go in during church services because we need to see if the church services are Alberta Health Services compliant. So that was the morning. Then the afternoon was the contempt hearing for the breach of the May 6th order that restrained everybody's constitutional rights here in Alberta to protest. And that was when people saw Pastor Art kneeling on the wet pavement on a busy street in Calgary. That was when he was being arrested for contempt of that prior order for holding an illegal public gathering, which is the Orwellian term they use to describe church here in Alberta. And again, serious problems with the service of that order, that, you know, they didn't actually serve Art with it. They didn't serve his lawyer with it. Sarah Miller's been his lawyer since not this April before. She never got service of it. They said that putting it in a plastic baggie and putting it at David Pawlowski's feet, so that's Pastor Art's brother, who's also up on contempt charges, putting it on his feet and walking away, or actually running away because David then yelled at them and told them to go away. They said that constitutes service. And there's no proof that anybody ever picked up they don't know what happened to that baggie of the order. But they said that constitutes service, and that should amount to them understanding the order, reading the order, and then giving the opportunity to comply with the order. I mean, it's all just ridiculous.
Well, and Sheila, I think that's very important, the points you brought up when it comes to the unspoken strategy of what the Calgary police and others are doing here. As you mentioned, in the terms of service, you've got to allow the person a chance to read it. You have to allow the person a chance to understand it. They breach that. They know those are the rules. Of course they know that those are the rules. So the question is, why are they doing this? And I will give you an answer to that question. I think of the tagline from the movie Jaws 4, this time it's personal. Pastor Pawlowski humiliated Alberta Health Services and the Calgary Police. How many millions of views has that video received, Sheila, when he's yelling at them, get out, and like stray dogs with their tails between their legs, they're cowering and they're walking out. They look pathetic, and it was a fitting look because they are pathetic. This is what it's about, Sheila. This is personal now for the bureaucrats and the agents of law enforcement when it comes to handing down these orders.
And that is evidenced in some of the arguments being made by the lawyers for Alberta Health Services. They said things like the abusive and disrespectful language. Actually, I think they said abusive and violent language used by Ms. Miller's clients. Language isn't violent. Language isn't violent. I suppose it could be construed as violent if someone's threatening in that language to do violence to you. But Pastor Art never did. He doesn't threaten people. He's a peaceful man. He's a prickly guy if you're trying to interrupt his church services, and that's kind of what I want to see out of a pastor. But he's never threatened anybody. He's never harmed anybody. He's never offered to harm anybody, and he's always calling for peace. He just wants to be, more than anything, left alone to do his work and, you know, hold services and take care of the people that everybody's forgotten about in Calgary. And you can see that it is become deeply personal for Alberta Health Services and the Calgary Police, that, you know, they are going to bring this guy to heel. And Sarah Miller pointed out in some of her arguments, and I got to tell you, I sit in on a lot of court cases, and I have never heard a judge as complimentary to a lawyer as Justice Germain was to Sarah Miller.
Really?
Called her work superb. said it was a real treat to read her legal materials.
Wow.
I mean, and I know Sarah's work is great. I've seen some of the victories that she's pulled off for some of our other pastors, but to hear a judge say it, that was really something else. But that the Alberta Health Services was specifically out to get Art.
Yep.
And in some of their materials for the May 6th order, in the May 6th order, that's the one that restrained everybody, but it specifically mentioned Glenn Carrott and Chris Scott by name, and then Jane and John Doe, so everybody else. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that order doesn't mention worship or any other thing like that. And the briefs filed to the judge that Alberta Health Services used to argue the necessity of that order never once mentioned worship services at all. But it was clear, Sarah Miller argues, that was the intent, was to have this order apply to Pastor Art. But the implication was, if they started mentioning worship services and congregations in that restraining order, that it probably would have failed. So they didn't. So they knew that it would probably fail if they mentioned those things, but their intention was to apply it to Art, and I guess by extension, Pastor Tim Stevens, who was also arrested under that same order. And so a lot of things were pretty sneakily done here, starting with the fact that everything was obtained in secret. Both orders were.
Sheila, I just want to pick up on something you said. The fact that Calgary police officers were complaining about abusive and violent language. Well, a couple of things here. One, that kind of comes with the job of being a police officer. I'm not saying they deserve that, but are you trying to tell me Pastor Arthur was giving you language that was abusive and violent? What is the kind of language the rank and file of the Calgary Police Service receive on the beat when it comes to gangbangers, or murderers or career criminals? I can imagine that kind of language. So that is just outrageous, and probably a good segue for our next video. Our lovely colleague in Cobourg, Ontario, Tamara Ugolini, she's got a report, and apparently the Cobourg Police Service, Sheila, they're kind of stressed out. They're suffering from PTSD, and when it comes to shutting down the rights of citizens to protest the lockdowns, or when it comes to people trying to get onto Cobourg's lovely beach, which of course is being shut down again by that gutless town council that they have in Cobourg. And I don't know. And let's not forget, there's a certain amount of stress that comes to police officers there when you're shooting protesters with tasers. So now the chief is trying to do some kind of publicity spin that, boo-hoo, the PTSD, the boys and gals in blue are receiving by basically being bullies out in Cobourg. I ain't buying it, and let's run a little footage of what Tamara had to say.
Officer, our media relations person, which is Lisa Monday. All right, thank you.
Well, the officer just approached me and called me by name because they know my name, and he just let me know that the Ford government has implemented or loosened restrictions recently, and that he never said anything about tickets, but he did try to say, please try and stay 5 feet apart, and that was pretty much it. Just letting us know that, they're not going to ticket us by the sounds of things, but please try and stand 5 feet apart to help make their job a little bit easier.
Have you received one of these $880 lockdown tickets? 4 of them. Yeah. Wow. So that's another participant here was telling me just under $4,000 worth of accumulated tickets.
Yeah. I mean, I guess at $880 a piece, yeah, you bet it adds up pretty quick.
Now, tell me about the fines that have been enforced here in front of Town Hall. Have you received any fines?
I've got 4 tickets so far.
4 tickets, and are they $880 each?
Yeah, the non-compliance $880 ticket.
So what's the total on that? My math isn't so good.
It's a lot. What am I at? Well, just under 4,000, right? So $3,600.
And Police Chief Vandegaard is noted as saying that this is costing taxpayers in excess of $8,000 a weekend. So how do you think they're going to recover that cost?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to recover it. I see comments from people saying that they should charge us, but we're in Canada and that's not how it works here.
So do you think these fines hold their weight in water?
No, I'm banking on that. I certainly don't have the money to pay these out front. If this does get to court and a judge orders me to pay it, then I'm going to have to do a long payment plan on it.
This extra law enforcement over the weekend is costing us in excess of $8,000. Again, can you make sense of that?
I honestly can't. They are spending $8,000 every weekend on overtime for police officers to come down and ticket and monitor peaceful people standing on a corner with signs. They're not attacking people, they're not offending people, they're not screaming and yelling at people. They're literally standing here, hugging each other, talking, catching up on their week, holding signs and waving and smiling at people. That constitutes an $8,000 overtime paycheck for police officers. I don't get it. If I was a Cobourg resident, unfortunately I'm Hamilton Township with a Cobourg resident or a Cobourg address, but if I was a Cobourg taxpayer, I would be angry right now. I would be standing in front of a call, as I am now, when they meet for their sessions or on their Zoom calls, and I would be raising bloody murder. My tax dollars should not be going towards police officers standing there monitoring peaceful people.
I'm interrupting your program to bring you this very important public service announcement. YouTube has...
Well, you know, Sheila, if our viewers go to Tamara's video, it gets further into the meat and potatoes about the police, you know, talking about all the stress they're under enforcing these ridiculous reopening Ontario Act rules. I mean, reopening places locked down more than anywhere else in the world. And you know, the thing I love, I'm going off on a tangerine here, Sheila, but there's a screenshot of Cobourg Police Chief Paul Vandegaard, and one of the most prominent things is that his preferred pronouns are he and him. In case you thought a guy called Paul with a full beard was a she, her, a Zer, spirit unicorn. I mean, what kind of soy boys are the rank and file of the Cobourg police? There we go. Look at that. There's his pronouns, he, him. Because you know what? I know what you're thinking, folks. You're looking at that photo and you're going, good golly, is that Miss America? You know, I mean, Chief, turn in your badge, man. If you got to put that on your bio, I'm not confident that you're cut out for policing. What do you say, Sheila?
What has happened to policing in this country? And, you know, I don't want to say it's all cops. It's not all cops.
No, it isn't.
But these bad ones really stick out. And I think these bad ones are also running the good ones out of the force.
Yes.
I was at a protest yesterday in Edmonton with our new reporter, Daniel Day. And there was a police officer who was speaking at the protest, and he was from Saskatchewan. He had recently retired, and he retired quite young from the force, because he said, I'm not doing this. This is not what I signed up for. I don't want to be the bad guy in my community. I signed up to be the guy who makes people safe.
Yeah.
And I just can't in good conscience do any of this. So yeah, sure. I get why there's cops experiencing extreme anxiety because they're forced to do this. But are you pushing back against the, against your superiors? Probably not. Are you willing to quit the force? I don't know. I know people have to earn a paycheck. But I get why these cops are anxious. But however, if you have a gun and a taser, I don't want you to be anxious. You know, I want you to be making the right decisions before you use lethal or near lethal force on someone.
Yeah, and I don't want you questioning your gender identity and all that other nonsense either. I mean, your job is to enforce the law. And by the way, to uphold your oath. And I think many of these police officers, when you're arresting somebody for waving a Canadian flag, but a Hamas flag or a Tamil Tiger terrorist flag, that's okay. When you're arresting somebody for displaying an anti-communism sign. When you're arresting somebody for quoting biblical passages, you are breaking your oath. This is disgusting. And I think I've talked about this before on the show, Sheila. I met a very lovely lady a few months ago when we were covering the Adam Skelly press conference. She just happened to be walking by, recognized me, huge Rebel fan, said her husband is a police officer. I won't give the division, but to your point that they don't all feel this way, she told me something I thought was very enlightening, and that is at his division, because her husband feels this is absolute nonsense, this, cracking down on anti-lockdown protesters. Half the officers are of that opinion. The other half, however, think they're doing God's work by getting these so-called modern-day typhoid Marys out of the public square. And there's real tension amongst those who are the true believers and those who are not. And I suspect that might be the case in several police forces and several divisions. I'm not sure what the answer is. I know Rocco Galati has filed an application in terms of 19 police officers, 15 active and 4 retired, that this is not what they signed up for. And I have such respect in my heart for these police officers. And, Sheila, it's kind of funny. We try to back the blue here. I mean, whatever your position is on policing, you can't have a society that doesn't have people in law enforcement because there's a lot of bad people. And yet, when I see Chief Paul Vandegaard have that, my preferred pronouns are he, him, I'm betting that's somebody foisting that on him. That's somebody from the far left that has infiltrated, the bureaucracy there. And these are the people that want to defund or outright ban policing. And yet, look at this pathetic chief taking his gender identity cues from the very people that despise him. I think it's so pathetic, Sheila.
Well, again, I can tell an anecdote from the protest yesterday, and that video will be coming up with Daniel in the next couple of days. But Antifa had a little 6-person Antifa dance party down by this protest of 3,000 other normal people. And they set up shop right next door to the cops, because they know that that's the safest place to be. And so, but they're also the first person who are we're against police brutality. Yeah, me too. But real police brutality, not just police not putting up with you. And, they're the first people who are the defund the police people. Yep. But they recognize that you do need police to keep you safe. And they're also anti-gun, but they set up shop right next door to the guys with guns because that is always the closest and safest place to be. And so that's where Antifa set up shop for their little dance party. Not that anyone would hurt them at a freedom protest. I mean, everybody just ignored them. There's normalcy to be had. Who cares about those weirdos, right? But it's funny because they say a lot of things on social media, and they say a lot of things in their protests. But when the rubber meets the road, they know even they need cops.
Oh, Sheila, I go back to last summer here in Toronto, Nathan Phillips Square, an illegal occupation of the square, 11 sections of the Trespass Act being broken by a group called Afro-Indigenous Rising. And when we went to the square to practice journalism, just to display the disgrace that was going on there, and it was a disgrace, it was filthy and unsanitary and unclean, they go running to City Hall security, and the police say, basically, we're camera shy. We don't want those mean journalists showing the disgrace occurring on the square. And the security guards and the police actually taking their cues from these criminals and telling us if we don't get off the square, we'll be trespassed. Unbelievable. And again, just to bring it back, the people with Afro-Indigenous Rising, these are the same type of people that are all down with the revolution in terms of shutting down the police once and for all. And yet the police are at their beck and call. Folks, try to make sense of this to me, please.
And the anti-lockdown protesters that keep getting arrested and keep getting ticketed, they're generally pro-law and order, pro-cop. And they're the ones getting violently taken down by the cops and issued tickets all the time. It doesn't make any sense.
Incredible. Anyways, I think we do have some feedback from the folks that are tuned in, Sheila. So if you can read some of those chats, that would be wonderful.
Yes, and if anybody hears whining or scratching, nobody's dying in here. My dog is locked in the office, but I don't want to get up from my desk to let her out. So she's just laying there making noise. Thanks for nothing, dog. Anyway, I'm going to read some of these. I guess we're calling them Rebel chats. They're from Rumble on their live chat. They're also from Super U. Super U's chat is called The Shout. On Odyssey, it's a hyper chat. And on Odyssey, you can leave us some money in the form of Odyssey's own cryptocurrency, which is called a library. So you can do that there. And I know that Rumble eventually has hinted at working toward their own version of Super Chat going forward. But as always, you don't need to rely on a live chat to support the work that we do. You can do that directly on the Rebel News main page. And actually, when you go to the Rebel News main page these days, there's a little pop-up. And I think it's relevant to talk about this because, again, as we hinted at before, June 1st, YouTube is changing their terms of service, and they'll probably kick us off the platform. The fact that we're even here right now is, a bit of a miracle. But if you leave us your email address or your phone number, just so that we can get in contact with you. If you go to YouTube one day and you're like, oh, where's Rebel News? We can tell you what's happened to us and where we've gone. And that's the best way to do it. And we promise we're not going to sell your information. That's all we're going to use it for. Thanks. Be quiet, dog. Honestly. Okay. So we've got a Rumble live chat from Rusty who says, wait a minute. Was this always here or is this new? It's brand new. I think Justin noticed it yesterday, I think. Right, Justin? Okay, perfect. New as of yesterday. Super U shout from Agatha. Good morning, fellow Super U friends. Rumble from Susan Grant. Wow, live chat on Rumble. Fantastic. Yeah, I guess people are really liking it, so that's great. A hyper chat of one library. Thank you from Wendy Walk. Is Chris Scott and the Whistle Stop open for business, serving food, pumping gas, selling merch? No. Nope. Chris went to jail for 3 days for contempt of that May 6th court order after he held a 1,500-person protest at the Whistle Stop. And this was after the government confiscated his property from him. They chained up the restaurant and gas station. They closed the campground for some reason and basically cut off the small town of Muir from its only service station, convenience store for 20 kilometers. And now to keep Chris out of jail, he is, the restaurant was taken from him anyway, but since he's already facing contempt, he is under advice of his lawyer, abiding by conditions for now. Otherwise, he'll go straight back to jail. And really, the man has done enough. He's done enough. A hyper chat of 5 libraries. Bingo. Oh, before I go on, by the way, if you'd like to help us help Chris Scott, he's got an incredible lawyer named Chad Williamson working on his case through fightthefines.com. And we're looking at 6 figures of a legal battle already, just to keep Chris out of jail and to fight the government. And I think Chris Scott and Chad Williamson might be the first people who are going to examine Chief Medical Officer of Health Dina Hinshaw and make her justify the evidence in her sworn affidavit that was presented to Justice Rook to necessitate that May 6th order that restrained everybody's civil liberties. So she signed an affidavit, she swore an affidavit. Chris ended up going to jail because of it. Now she has to answer for it and explain it in examination. And so I think this is a huge, huge thing that they are doing to make the government explain all that they've done, if they are indeed able to. I doubt that they will. They're going to be the first people who are attempting to do it. And anyway, you can donate to help us with that at fightthefines.com. And like I said, we're already 6 figures into it, but it is so important to make the government answer for what they've done. And Chris has already once dragged the government kicking and screaming into opening restaurants the first time that he reopened in defiance of the lockdowns. So he's already helped everybody. He's given a lot, including his own liberty. And now he's going to make sure that the government explains themselves. So it's really something else what Chris and Chad are doing there.
I can hardly wait, Sheila, really.
I'm very excited. I don't think that Hinshaw ever thought that someone would challenge her on the evidence in her sworn affidavit. Now she's got to explain it. You have to justify sending a man to jail. A hyper chat of 5 libraries from Binga. My uncle made benches in the back of his pickup truck, and we would all pile in the back bed of the truck and hold on, and he'd drive us to the farmers for work. Back when we were freer and took risks, paid for my high school wardrobe with that job. Different times. Yeah, you know what? I killed pigeons all the way to my very first Super Nintendo. So, it's a different time to be alive. Although I try to keep the traditions alive. I make my kids go do farm work for their allowance, like picking rocks, like the worst farm work. But I remember picking rocks, riding around in the back of my dad's Ford Courier farm truck.
Wow. It's so different out in the country. That reminds me, Sheila, of an episode of the Beverly Hillbillies where the Clampetts buy an airline and they replace the seats and put benches in. And instead of seat belts, it's just twine to string yourself in. So
I'd fly that airline. Is that any worse than Ryanair? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's right.
A hyper chat of 3 libraries from Pink Phoenix. Hi, Catherine. Good morning, friends. Shout out to the good Justin.
He's smiling now.
Are we going to talk about Alberta open for summer BS? Yeah, that's really something else. Yesterday, Jason Kenney announced our 3-stage reopening plan. And we're already meeting the benchmarks for stage 1. But the last time we had a staged reopening plan, week after week, we were meeting the benchmarks, and yet we weren't reopening. So I'm not optimistic. He says that we'll enter into stage 1 reopening by June 1st, which means that we'll go back to outdoor dining and a few other things. And I think kids' sports, maybe, I'm not sure. I didn't pay too much attention to it because I think the benchmarks are going to get moved. And again, it's hinged on vaccination rates. So, the more people who get vaccinated, the quicker we can reopen, which is this soft tyrannical coercion. And I went today to look to see what the vaccine booking times are. And I think based on yesterday's announcement that, we can do all these things, just go and get vaccinated, and you can even do them faster. So it's 2 weeks after we reach a certain benchmark, then things will reopen, is sort of my understanding. So if 2 weeks after stage 1, we can probably open June 15th. And so the idea is we should be completely reopened by early July with no restrictions whatsoever.
How about just reopening it? I mean, these 3-stage reopening, I mean, it sounds like Premier Kenney is trying to build a Saturn V rocket to go to the moon. Just open the economy already. Forget these stages and just look to the south at jurisdictions like Florida, where it's another world right now, Sheila.
Well, and the point I was trying to make was, because Jason Kenney tied this to vaccination rates, I went to see when the closest vaccination thing would be, like, in my area. And it's like June 9th is when the next appointment you can get, because I think everybody rushed out yesterday. So the moral of the story is the soft coercion worked.
Wow.
Yeah. It's moderately disappointing. But at the same time, it's interesting to watch Rachel Notley, who has been, like, hammering vaccines, now saying you're opening too fast. And I'm like, wait, you said we needed to vaccinate more people so that we could reopen, and now we are, but now you're saying it's too fast. So are you questioning the effectiveness of vaccines? Because you haven't been doing that all along. That's just an interesting thing that I noted on the internet yesterday. We've got a super you from you Mog. The love of money is the root of evil. Yeah. I guess I could say that about John Cena for sure. Hyper chat to libraries. Celtic Mutt. I would really like to support Rebel News with 50% of all profits from my t-shirt sales, and then you link to your Redbubble store. Could you just send that to us at tips@rebelnews.com, and I'll send that up the right supply chain and see. I'll put that in front of the right people. Thanks. And I did click on that as I was waiting, and you have a meatitarian sticker. I like stickers and I like meat, so it was kind of like, oh, probably order that one. Super you from G Mike 3, save Taiwan, bring back Hong Kong, free Tibet, stand for Uyghurs. Yeah. I think it was the Babylon Bee had a good article, like their satirical articles about how John Cena is going to be wrestling Uyghurs.
They're great at the Babylon Bee, aren't they?
Oh, they're so funny and so smart. Like when I read it, I'm like, God, that's so smart. I love good smart satire, and they're really good and funny. Like, it's just funny. Yeah, well, if John Cena does wrestle Uyghurs, Sheila, it's going to be a cage match. Yeah. Because that's how people there of that faith are being treated shamefully. But the world can't be bothered for some reason. How well can you wrestle after your organs have been harvested? Yeah. For rich Chinese people to receive as transplants, because that happens to Uyghurs and Falun Gong. We've got a Rumble chat from Trini Canadian. You're innocent until proven conservative. I like that. That's funny. We've got a Super You shout from Delosy 81. Del Sol 81, sorry. As a registered massage therapist, I can't and won't massage anyone under 18 without express consent. A 12-year-old is not deemed capable of consent for massage, but they are for an experimental jab. Yeah. And I didn't even know that about registered massage therapy, Sheila, that you had to have parental consent. And so, again, it's demonstrating another double standard that we have out there when it comes to age and consent. Well, they can't even go in a tanning bed. Like, they can't even go in a tanning bed. And yet they can just go get a vaccine without their parents knowing. And again, this is not about the efficacy of a vaccine. Get a vaccine, don't get a vaccine, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, wear the whole box of masks. I don't care anymore. I don't care. Just don't tell me how to live. And don't do things to my kids without me knowing. That's it. We should put a call out to Tan Mom to find out about the tanning bed. My kid can't go get her ears pierced without me signing and being there. Wow. And that, if you take it out, it just heals up. They can't do that to my kid, but they can go get some medicine without me knowing. Yeah. That seems odd. And free ice cream, like they were handing out at Nathan Phillips Square on Sunday. Get in the van, kids. So weirdo. Balloons and clowns. Oh, come over and get a jab and you can pet my puppy. Yeah. Yikes. Oh. Yeah. It's very Ted Bundy. Anyway. Yeah. Rumble chat from On the Bit. We picked rocks when I was a little kid for $10 an hour. We were rich. Were you picking rocks for millionaires? No, there's no $10 an hour around here. None. Nope. Hyper chat of one library. Oh, Stoned Gamer. Justin told me about this. I read it out last time numerically, but I think it's supposed to say Stoned Gamer. It says Southwest Airlines attendant attacks passenger over her mask. Ooh. Mainstream news is lying and claiming passenger attacked first. Oh, I haven't seen that. I'll have to check it out. That's very interesting. Yeah, boy, those flight attendants are sure uptight. And I don't know if I don't think they're all uptight. I think they're all like, I'm so sick of this. But some of them are really happy to look like they're going into brain surgery when they're just giving you your club soda. Like they are face shield, mask, smock, booties, gloves. Like they are, seriously, they're going to perform a heart transplant. And it's like, I'd like a soda water, please.
I saw that very thing when we were flying back from Montreal earlier this month, Sheila. And what struck me was a flight attendant who had glasses, just the kind of glasses you're wearing, and then goggles over the glasses. I mean, really? Are you really that scared of, I would imagine, given the risk, I think the glass lenses you have in front of your eyes is ample protection, but, she looked like some weird sci-fi creature, and I haven't even described all the other stuff she was entombing her head with, but that's what we encountered, and I shook my head. I wouldn't last an hour with all those contraptions on my head. I mean, trying to breathe, and you're already in a horrible little cylinder trap. It's not my bag.
No, when we were flying back from Toronto a couple weeks ago, my daughter looks at the flight attendant and she looks at me and she goes, "Mom, does the coronavirus give you welder's flash? Why is she wearing goggles?" Okay, let's keep going. We've got a rumble from Joe Max 171. I identify as vaccinated. That should be good enough, right?
Wow.
That's kind of funny. That's kind of funny because we were at the protest again yesterday that I was covering with Daniel Day. And there was a person there with a sign that says, "This is a pro-Palestinian protest. Is that good enough for you, Jason Kenney?"
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
This is truly the year of hypocrisy, isn't it, Sheila?
So much. It's so in your face.
Yeah.
It's never been this in your face. You know they're hypocrites. You know that they're going about these things in a different way in their private lives. But it is really in your face, and they just say, "Oh, like no harm, no foul. I apologize," and everyone's supposed to be fine with it. And I think we're all caught up, by the way.
Okay then.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, folks? We're pretty much on time, just a minute after. So thank you all for tuning in. A super special thank you to those who made a contribution. It's how we keep the lights on, and we're very grateful. So on the behalf of Justin and Sheila Gunn Reid, I'm David Menzies signing off. We'll see you on next Tuesday. In the meantime, stay sane.